There is a time spent, I think, being in the area and present where there's lots of people that I just know. Like some of the people that were involved in the photography project, I mean, one of them was, he's my mechanic, or, there's one that I know through voices and he knows my uncle, so I have this, I will see them outside of work. It's all the little tiny stuff that I think is really important. You just bob in somewhere, or just the extra mile you have to go when you're building relationships with people. How does that become part of sort of everybody's practice at the right level for them? Just that additional extra step that you take, which makes it feel genuine and with integrity, that's not based on just a project where people don't feel used or whatever. And I think there's something about that that's quite difficult to maintain. What does that look like for In-Situ as it grows? It's not just about we're doing a project so we need some people on a project. That is the continuity, I think, ultimately adds another dimension to what we do. So how does that keep going when you start to lose people who've got that longer term time with people, How do you become embedded even though you don't live here or you're not from here? How do you spend time in a place that's just as important? And that brings the other dimension of a new pair of eyes or a new way of looking at things.
I was really aware of myself coming into this place. I'd never visited Briarfield before my interview. It raised questions for me about what embedded practice meant, being that I had no relationship to the place.
With my role, there's a big chunk of it that goes unseen. There's a big chunk of it dealing with one-to-one conversations, and this could range from someone just needing a chat to a serious or potentially serious safeguarding concern. I feel like in arts organisations, that's probably not the main space, it's not the main topic that we have.
Because In-Situ is this real fusion of art and community work, there's people with loads of different life and professional experiences working together. And interesting dialogues form around that, where you're sharing knowledge and sharing encouragement of areas that you may not be as familiar with.
I'd say that I am more the community strand of stuff, but as I'm learning more about the arts and as I'm learning more about different practices, different disciplines, I feel like I'm more confident and more able to recognise and potentially see where this person could fit in, or how this could enhance something that we're already doing, or maybe kickstart something new.
I had very little knowledge of the daily kind of routines of Pakistani families and the communities here. It's been great to just learn more about things that I just haven't previously been aware of.
I've had lots of experiences working with people from different backgrounds, particularly South Asian communities, and it's only through In-Situ that I've really dug much deeper into that, but I've had to really put myself into positions to understand or spend time with people, and I think that's part of being embedded. And then it's also understanding where that's not easy for people as well.
I felt very different to the rest of my team members. Most of my colleagues were really well spoken, and a lot of them had a lot of art knowledge, which is why I struggled to keep up with conversations sometimes. If there was conversations around a certain artist or a certain practitioner or a certain practice, I would still be figuring out, hold on a minute, is that an individual? Is that a collective? How does this work? What's going on here? Not being from an art background and not being white as well amongst my team, often I'd feel isolated just from even conversations or even what's going on, just because I was unaware. Yeah, it took a while, but eventually I feel like I have been able to see where I contribute to projects and where my qualities and skills are needed and are crucial within our programmes. Anytime I did used to feel like I don't fit into this team and I'm not good enough to be in this team, there would always be this back inner voice that would be like, yes, you can and you need to, because In-Situ is a fantastic organisation that has all its aims in line with what you believe in as well. And you need to truly take that stance and be a part of it and really represent everything that you know about your local community and area. It's really challenged me to be able to articulate complex traditions and prejudices of the community to a majority white team who probably don't know. How do you slip in there that, hold on a minute, that great idea might not be so great because of this subject, and this subject could be something that's quite under the radar, something that's quite a taboo. This is very rooted, it's close to home, I live just up the road, so everything's very connected. Even when I'm shopping in the supermarket, you still represent in your organisation when you're that local anyway.
A challenge of the work is being able to not separate the two, but be mindful of the fact that you are putting yourself in potentially emotionally challenging scenarios that wouldn't traditionally be expected of you at work. I think it's just to do with the fact that the work requires personal investment, and for you to form meaningful relationships with your colleagues, but also people outside of the organisation, in order to grow ideas and to grow projects that have long-term benefits, or even if the benefits aren't long-term, have meaningful impact in that moment of a person's life. And so that does place you in vulnerable situations, and perhaps more of you is expected to show up at work than the traditional professional self.
When you're an organisation whose aim is to serve the community, it's important to remember that the community is all of us, and to be looking all the way around, and it's not us and them. It's not the organisation as a kind of institution determining what's best and doing whilst others in the community are receiving. More traditionally, you might plan a project, you plan all the stages, you know who you'll be working with and what's likely to happen. You're working towards an end product or an end result.
A part of the challenge of working for In-Situ is trying to come to terms with how things are externally reviewed, which isn't through an obvious criteria system, and is actually about how the next phase of community engagement begins, or the next phase of ideas for a project come into fruition.
I think that the way perhaps In-Situ values projects is more to do with what they lead on to, and one project leads to the next. So I guess the way that we might value projects is to do with what opportunities they open up, not only for the organisation and where the programme goes next, but also for individuals involved in it, either on the team or from the community, or for artists who've been working alongside us, and opportunities for conversations.
Often you don't really know fully how successful a project has been until you can see the rewards of it in the next project.
In-Situ really values conversations in a way that it's not that they're leading to a result that you're trying to measure, it's valuing conversations for its own sake. And these happen to lead on to other things. And I think that that's the foundation of the work.
In Briarfield, there's a lack of understanding as to why you would do something. It's like, if something doesn't have purpose, why would you do it? Everything needs to have a purpose. Whereas with art, it's like art for art's sake, isn't it? If we don't have artists, then there's no one creating, there's no one making. And where do we find that value? Art's only art if it means something, if it translates into something. But then unless we have artists making and creating, we don't get to the stuff that's really meaningful, do we? Because everything's a process.